I remember after one of my particularly dangerous trips into Syria, my mom sent me a message saying, "Syria took my father. I don't want Syria to take my daughter." I'm Syrian American. I'm Arab American. I was raised very bicultural, in a very bicultural household, mostly overseas outside of the US. And, post 9/11, I really saw this, East-West divide growing even bigger. And I'd also realized, when I went back to the US for college, that since I look a lot like the blonde girl next door, I could talk to other Americans about things that were happening in these, weird foreign countries, and they would grow interested in it. With that, I decided to become a journalist to try to explain people to each other and get myself to Iraq. I only know this Syria well. I don't know the Syria that my mother grew up in. My backstory and my family's backstory with Syria is quite complicated because my mother's not just Syrian. My grandfather was the prime minister of Syria in 1949, and he was assassinated. And I remember after one of my particularly dangerous trips into Syria, my mom sent me a message saying, "Syria took my father. I don't want Syria to take my daughter." As a female foreign correspondent, even though I do speak Arabic, you exist kind of in this gray space. So there's this recognition among the men that even though you're female, you're not you don't fall within the same set of rules as most women who they interact with do. And so you're welcome into their space. The advantage comes with the reality that you can then get up and go into the women's space and get that whole entire perspective on what's actually happening, which is not something that my male colleagues can do. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do something or that you can't figure something out, because you can. Journalism, without journalism done by women and without the voice of female journalists, is an extraordinary disservice to the industry. The industry needs us and our voice. What does that look like when you have a lost generation who by and large only remembers war and cruelty and killing and despair and constant displacement? What kind of individuals do those children grow up to be? And do they even have a chance at being something else? And that's one of the main reasons why, or one of the drivers why I wanted to start my charity. When you're dealing with injured children who aren't able to access the medical care that they need, and that's what my charity does, on top of all of the psychological impact of the war, you also have the physical impact of the war on them. Once that child begins to receive medical treatment, once they realize that they're not alone, once they realize that they do have this chance to get better and go back to school and, not be bullied because of their injury, and once they see the impact that has on their parent, because you're lifting such a burden from their parent, you actually see that kid's eyes come back to life. And it is the most beautiful thing that I have ever seen.